So I have been doing a series asking the question, is Joe Biden too old? And I understand that question feels some kind of way. And my answer is always to the answer, no. Age
doesn't make
age in and of itself is not the issue.
What happens to you
Yes.
when you get old?
Right. There's sometimes mental slowness, mental degradation. Sometimes you're slower, you're not altogether there. But again, that all depends on whether or not you're capable enough to do the job. And age in and of itself does not mean that you're incapable of doing the job. You might have slowed down a bit. You may have missed a step or two. But oftentimes wisdom sometimes makes up for the missteps, meaning it gives you somewhat of a balance. Except there are times, however, there are some individuals who get to the point where it doesn't seem like they're mentally all together there. And they call these quote-unquote gaffes when they're really mental lapses. It bespeaks of a person who is losing it. Senile may be too strong, but at the very least...
Mild cognitive impairment. That's what we code it as.
Right. Now, in the same way, I don't expect a blind person to drive a truck, even though there's nothing inherently wrong with that person being blind. Or I expect a person with no legs to be a mountain climber, even though there's nothing inherently wrong with a person not having any legs. It's the same thing is true with the presidency of the United States. There's certain cognitive level that I need that person to be at. And if there is evidence that that person, be it for age or be it for, hitting their head, whatever the reason, is showing some kind of cognitive impairment, then that needs to be brought into the conversation, especially if we're talking about putting this person into the presidency. And Joe Biden, just because he wants to be president, there may be blind people who want to drive race cars, but it's the society itself that says, whoa, maybe that's not the best thing in the world for the rest of us.
Maybe he's not the most qualified
cognitively for the job. That's where I'm at.
Trudy says Biden was always an idiot. Okay, go ahead.
That's fair enough. But it seems like the people for the last 40 years had enough sense to say, okay, let's not put this asshole in the White House. These days, that tends to have fallen by the wayside. Just so we can catch up. Joe Biden sent his supporters to a non-existent website. That by itself is funny. Joe Biden couldn't remember where the last mass 2 shootings had taken place, even though the mass shootings had literally just taken place like a day or so before. Joe Biden kept calling Theresa May Margaret Thatcher, which again seems like he remembers stuff a lot from 20 years ago, but doesn't necessarily remember it now. Joe Biden didn't have sense enough, the political astuteness enough, to... When you're in a Democratic primary where African Americans vote, literally 90% of African American vote goes to Democrats. You're in a Democratic primary and you're raising racists and your association with those racists as the height of civility. And then not being politically astute enough after being attacked for it all week to be shocked that you're being hit with it on a debate stage. He's like, I couldn't believe she said that. I couldn't believe she said that. Did you hear what she said about me? Like, I'm not a racist at all. Like, he felt some kind of way about that. He was shocked by that. And then the question that people ask, is Joe Biden doing the rope and open the debates? Is the best Joe Biden can do is just getting hammered over and over and over again in the debates. Someone in the media asked the question, it seems that Joe Biden doesn't know where he is. It's like Joe Biden he was shocked that he found himself on a debate stage. Somebody in the media said that. Nobody wants to bring in the age thing. And then yesterday or the day before, he said this.
And the other thing we should do is we should challenge these students. We should challenge students in these schools to have advanced placement programs in these schools. We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. Wealthy kids.
Who clapped?
That was an awkward clap.
Who clapped? They were like, wait, what?
They're trying to fix it. They're trying to help
They were
him.
clapping and they were like, wait, what?
Wait, what did he just say? Yeah, they're trying to help him. They're trying to fix it.
Oh, poor Joe.
Yeah, poor Joe. My system is acting up, guys.
Joe.
I apologize.
Let me read these super chats while you get that straight. Because I don't want to...
Wait. I want to talk about this for a moment. Poor kids. Let's hear this. And because I want you to notice something else when he says this. Hold on. Just take a look. I need to make this larger. Well, it's not really a trimmer. It's him realizing that he's fucked up.
Challenge these students. We should challenge students in these schools to have advanced...
God damn it.
What the...
My Twitter thing is acting up.
We should challenge these...
See, it's not
students. We should challenge students in these schools to have advanced placement programs in these schools. We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. Wealthy kids, black kids.
The awkward clap is the greatest thing on the planet, by the way.
Think about it. And we have to have advanced placement programs in these schools. We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
Right there. He realized he fucked up, and he had to fix that. Now, you could say that, look, if Joe Biden was really out of it, he would have just kind of ran with that. Instead of trying to fix it.
He cleans it.
He didn't clean it because cleaning it made it worse. He's a poor kid.
Asian kids, black kids, I mean everybody.
Poor kids are just as talented as everybody white else. Kids. Now, the catch here is you just switched race, or you just switched something that's an issue of class, and has fused it with the issue of race by saying white kids. And in doing so, kind of fused this thing of black and poverty 101. Now, there are more whites in poverty than blacks because there are more whites in this country. So let's just be clear, there are more whites on welfare and food stamps. So there's that. So this notion that you're entirely fusing this thing with race gets a little bit of weird and gets what's in Joe Biden's head. But he says, poor kids are just as good as white kids. And then he says, oh, and black kids. Now, I've stuttered that because for a moment he stops and he realizes, oh, I fucked up. I need to clean this up. Look at the stutter. The stutter tells it.
Talented as white kids. Wealthy kids.
He had to fix that. Because look, if you're saying poor kids are just as talented, the next thing is rich kids.
Poor What's kids, the opposite of poor?
Rich. Poor kids white. Are just as talented as rich kids. Right. right.
Oh, I mean black. Asian, everybody.
I mean everybody. Poor kids are just as talented as white kids. Oh, wait. I messed up there. I have a cognitive impairment. I'm sorry, I'm getting old. I mean, under normal circumstances, I would have said poor kids are just as talented as rich kids. But I'm messed up. I'm sorry. I'm losing a few steps. My bad. The problem is gap or mental confusion. He's getting older.
Poor as African American.
And that's the honest thing. That's what he thinks.
You should be mentally stable enough not to say that.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
20 years ago, he wouldn't have said that.
Black kids, Asian kids. No, I really mean it, but think how we think about it.
That's not how we think about it, Joe. That's how you think about it. And fact of the matter is, you told on yourself when you start going to the other races because this line makes no sense.
Kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. Wealthy kids.
Poor kids are just as talented. You know, the first time I heard this, I was like, why is everybody flipping out? And then I really heard it, and I was laughing. You came in, and I was laughing so hard. Poor kids are just as talented as white kids. And then he says, and Asian kids, and wealthy kids, and black kids.
Wealthy. Just stop at wealthy. I meant to say wealthy.
But it makes no sense. Poor kids are just as talented as blacks, Asians, whites. What are you saying?
Well, I mean, he's been doing a lot of speeches.
All right, so a new guy.
He just makes up his words.
Okay, fair enough. But how often does it happen? Like, how often are the mistakes when you get to the point of saying, okay, these aren't just mistakes. He's just losing it mentally. Where does that take place? Joe Biden said that the Parkland shooting kids, and just so we can show it, and I'll explain why this is absurd. Joe Biden said when he was vice president when the deadly high school shooting in Parkland, Florida took place in 2018. The Parkland shooting took place in 2018. Joe Biden on the campaign stage said that the shootings took place while he was in office. If Joe Biden was still in office in 2018, it is a shocking as shit to me. Now, maybe Joe Biden thought he was still in office because, again, Joe Biden is not altogether there. And I keep saying Joe Biden is shocked that he's even on a debate stage. Not because he's shocked that he could get on the debate stage from his political clout, more so that he just didn't know where he was. I'm saying here we are again. The president or the vice president thought that he was vice president in 2018.
I just got confused.
Again.
That's what happened.
Again. That's my point. How often do you want the President of the United States confused? That's all. That's my basic point. I'm not saying that Joe Biden is too old as an absolute. I'm not saying that Joe Biden is too old as an absolute. Because age is what it is.
It's his mental status.
Are you mentally altogether there to do the job? And if you thought you were the vice president in 2018 talking to the Parkland kids.
You were wrong, bro, Joe.
You're wrong, bro. Trump was in office in 2018. Pence was vice president in 2018.
Do you know where you are right now,
Does Joe Biden know where he is?
Do you know what year this is?
Does Joe Biden know what year this is? You know, it's like when the doctors they come into your room.
People come back from amnesia and they're
do you know what day this is?
Do you know your name?
Do you know who's the vice president? It's like,
well, it's funny because sometimes that's what they ask them. Like in the well, I don't know. In the movies, they say, "Do you know who the president is?"
They do that in the hospital. And
Joe would be like,
"Do you know who the vice president is?" Me, I'm the vice president. Joe, it's 2018. I know I'm the vice president. I'm the vice president. I need to get to the White House immediately. Joe, calm down, Joe. Calm down. That's Joe Biden. I love this. Joe Biden said he was vice president when the deadly high school shooting in Parkland, Florida took place, except it happened in 2018, more than a year after he left office. This latest quote-unquote gaffe, or again, I keep making a point, mental confusion, not altogether there, brought about by advanced age. It's not that age in and of itself is the case. You have all sorts of people who are mentally together there at advanced age. I had an older woman who was in a race with me in one of the things. I think I was like my 20s. She was like 80. And she nearly beat me in a race. Yeah, we were out there jogging. This was at the time I was doing exercise. And she was running around the track. And she nearly beat me in that race. It took me a little extra energy. I looked back and was like, oh shit, that older woman is right there. So it doesn't mean the older woman is right there. Oh, okay. So it doesn't necessarily mean that just because you're at advanced age that you can't do it. It's not the age. It's not the age. It's whether or not you're mentally fit for the job. And I'm just making the point that it doesn't seem that Joe Biden is. It barely seems that he knows where he is or what year it is. Joe Biden told reporters on Iowa on Saturday that those kids in Parkland came up to see me when I was vice president. But when they visited Capitol Hill to talk to members of Congress, lawmakers were basically cowering, not wanting to see them. They did not want to face it on camera. The problem, again...
That didn't happen,
Joe. In 2018, you were not the vice president.
Now, to be fair to Joe...
He thought he was talking about... There have been a lot of shootings. Yes.
So he probably did encounter children.
He thought it was one of the other shootings that took place. So survivors from the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in Parkland, Florida met national headlines, right? This shooting was the deadliest 2014. Now, Biden, along with Gifford of Arizona, who was shot in the head during the event with constituents in Tucson in 2011. Tucson, Arizona. In 2011, met with the Stoneman students in Washington days after the 2018 incident. It just seems like he's not altogether there mentally. I mean, and these gaffes, like at a certain point, people need to call them gaffes and just say, look, Biden's not altogether there mentally. People are voting for him because they believe he is more electable. But shouldn't there be qualifications for the job beyond just we think he can beat Trump? That's all. I mean, I do these stories because I try to make the point of they believe he can beat Trump, which is why they're supporting Biden. When you look at all the polling, you read into the polling says, we think he's more electable, we think he can beat Trump. And so that's where his support comes from. But should there be qualifications beyond, we just think he can win, and one of those qualifications be he's mentally there. He's mentally there. Now, they might say, well, Trump is an idiot, and Trump makes it in the White House. So fair enough. But when you have alternatives...
Fuck, Trump is the new presidential bar.
Yeah, that's the bar. That's the bar now. I'm just saying, more mental gaffes and confusion by Joe Biden. More mental gaffes and more confusion by Joe Biden.
Okay.
He doesn't seem to know what year it is, or where he is, or even when he was vice president. I mean, come on. Like, I know, yes, I'm poking to a certain degree, but there's smoke in this fire. He's lost some steps. If you look at the old footage of Joe Biden back during his congressional days, back in the 30s and 40s, when he was fighting to put more black bodies in prison, that is a different man than the shadow of a man that you're seeing on a debate stage. He's a shadow of what he was.
Shadow of a man.
That's a brutal statement, ain't it? I like it. I like it. I love the turn of a phrase, a shadow of a man that he was. But it just so happens that that phrase is true. That turn of a phrase is true. This is not Joe Biden. I've kept it early on. I said, it looks like Joe Biden doesn't want to run in the race. He just wants to be president. Honestly, but I think if anybody's looking at this in an honest way and they see the way he act, behave, how he, he's low energy, he just seems out of it. It just seems like he just wants to be president because he wants to be president. I don't put somebody in the presidency just because they want to be president.
Does he even want to be president?
I think he does.
Who's his VP?
I don't know.
Hillary?
Can you imagine that shit? Can you imagine that shit? He just says, we're going to go full centrism. I'm going to put Hillary Clinton as my VP. Honestly, if he was smart, he would call Elizabeth Warren. He would say, I'm going to make Elizabeth Warren my vice president. I'm going to do that now, right now. That's what he should do. Because, look, if you look at the polling, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren combined beat Joe Biden. They do, in combination. Both of them are pulling in such a largesse of the lefty vote that combined, they beat Joe Biden. Outside of them being in the race together, they split the vote, allowing Joe Biden to just edge up more in the polling. If Joe Biden came up and says, I'm going to make Elizabeth Warren my vice president if she have me, Joe Biden wins. He'll take it. It wouldn't even be close. Sanders wouldn't have a choice. He would lose. Now, that doesn't mean Elizabeth Warren would go for it. Elizabeth Warren might say, fuck you. I'm not doing that shit. Which wouldn't matter.
Fuck you, creepy Uncle Joe.
Yeah, you're not going to be smelling my hair. That's all he wants. He just wants to be, it's like they're on a debate stage together, or they're on stage together, and Joe Biden just keeps getting closer and closer and closer. And then it's like at some point he's like,
Creepy Joe.
He's just there. He's just there. I have so many pictures of Joe Biden's. His nose is just like
Creepy Joe.
He's just there. You try to do that to some black women, they'd be like, "Fuck off me."
Ooh, that's racist. All right, Krillin 876. We're gonna read super chats before we go on to the next topic.
Did you have anything to say about this? I mean,
no, I've said everything.
Okay, I just think he's not mentally there. That's all, and that's why I do these stories, because I kind of want to put a circle around.
The diagnosis is mild cognitive impairment.
What about by advanced years?